had someone DM me yesterday saying, what would happen if the Dallas Stars, if Jim Nill went to Eric Tulsky and said, we want our 2 first-round picks back from the Rantanen deal, and we'll give you Jason Robertson?
1 year left on Robertson, right?
At a very, very nice number. Now he has arbitration rights at the end of it.
Yeah.
Pause on that. Pause on that one, because I want to clear a couple of things up here. I want to talk a little bit about Dallas, because I put this in the blog. I didn't know it was going to turn into this humongous storm, but let's put up the Dave Pagnotta tweet here before we start to get into it. Because, listen, there are a lot of conversations that are happening in Dallas about what to do and how to change things and how to get there. And right now they have just under $5 million worth of cap space to do it. So this was what Dave, we had on the program yesterday, talking about Marner, throwing up on Twitter. Noise out of Dallas about Peter DeBoer. Per multiple sources, players are not pleased with how we handled several situations during the Western Conference Final, along with post-game 5 and exit media remarks. Told players voiced concerns during internal exit interviews. DeBoer has 1 year left on his contract. So I'm not disputing any of that. As a matter of fact, I believe all of that to be true. I think there are major discussions going on at a lot of levels, and I think that the owner is not exactly thrilled at the way that things have played out. Now, Tom Ghilardi is the owner of the Dallas Stars, and Tom Ghilardi very, very much first of all, he's a very passionate and generous owner. Like everything, like during this run for the Dallas Stars, where there have been many times where we've said this team is good enough to win the Stanley Cup. Like I looked at the Dallas Stars this year, multiple points during the season, and said, this team's going to win the Stanley Cup. This is going to be the Dallas Stars' second Stanley Cup, going back to 1999 when they won it for the first time. This team is just that good. You know, there's no sort of, visible major flaws here, especially after what Jim Nill did at trade deadline. But there is very much a vibe of, okay, have we sort of plateaued here? And given that the owner has done essentially whatever the team has wanted or needed, both with the team, off the ice, all of it, right? This owner has written a lot of checks for this team. And I don't think this owner is thrilled that he's not getting the ROI, the return on investment that he's wanted, and that is the Stanley Cup. So I think right now in the Stars organization, the conversation is revolving around how do we get past this Western Conference Final hump? How do we take this to a level where this is a team that can compete consistently, not unlike Florida, not unlike Edmonton, who are back in the Stanley Cup Final, consistently get to the Stanley Cup Final year in and year out with a roster that should be able to fight for the Stanley Cup and qualify for the Stanley Cup. Like this was the year, like there have been a number of years where, and I really do respect Jim Nill for this, where he's recognized that they're not ready yet. You may look at it and say, like, there's a lot of stretches where the Dallas Stars will string together a lot of wins, and you'll say, all right, this team is ready, and Nill has read it perfectly. Not yet, not yet, not yet. But they're at a place right now where you're starting to see the veterans age out, Ben, Seguin, most obviously, and some of the kids aren't quite ready yet to step into spots. They're in a really interesting situation right now in Dallas. Nill reads and recognizes that and says, all right, this is the year to do it. Like when we first started doing this show, the Dallas Stars were very much, and they ended up getting Mikko Rantanen, which was the biggest fish at catching the biggest fish at trade deadline. They were in go for it, big game hunting mode. There was a lot of talk about them maybe going to the grocery store and only having to go down one aisle, and that aisle was called the Calgary Flames. And we wondered about Nazem Kadri, and we wondered about Rasmus Andersson. But the problem with that was Calgary had a competitive year, and none of those guys were going anywhere. Conroy wasn't going to let any of those guys. So Jim Nill looked elsewhere, and it was the deal with the San Jose Sharks and Cody Ceci and Mikael Granlund. Granlund was awesome. Granlund was fantastic from the remainder of the regular season and in through the playoffs. And then the big one. And it, trust me, moving Logan Stankoven was a major deal for that organization. There were many people, that know the organization well that said Logan Stankoven will never be traded. That is how well thought of Logan Stankoven is, and was rather, in the Dallas Stars organization. But when someone calls you up and says, do you want a top 10 player in the NHL and Mikko Rantanen?
Yeah.
And it's going to cost you some draft capital, and I'm sorry, but Logan Stankoven, it's real tough to make the case where you say no because we can't trade Logan Stankoven.
Especially where they were in their window or are in their window.
Exactly.
Especially.
Exactly. Now, the interesting thing about that is we always consider, and one of the fascinating things about Dallas, and this is where you really have to compliment not just Jim Nill, but Joe McDonnell as well, and Rich Peverly, and the scouting staffs. They've been able to open up a number of different windows. You can make the argument now that by acquiring Mikko Rantanen, they've opened yet another window. Yet they find themselves now in a situation where now Jamie Benn, his contract expires at the end of the season. There's a number of players. I mean, Granlund still has an expiring contract. Matt Duchene is on an expiring contract as well. Pork, but he's an RFA, and Dodonov, who Peter DeBoer really relied on in the playoffs and seems to really like. They have just under $5 million of cap space, and they want to change this team. Not profoundly. Right, it's still going to be a competitive team. No one's talking about taking a step back, but how do you get over the hump? And the one thing that a lot of people, anyway, people that I talk to, keep coming back to is, could Jason Robertson and his $7.75 million contract, which is a very, very nice number, considering the production you get out of Jason Robertson. Is this maybe, I don't want to say the only move, but is it probably the most obvious move that the Dallas Stars could make in order to get a return that can help them get over the hump? Now, do they allocate resources? And one of the things I mentioned in the blog was, do they go after someone like Aaron Ekblad? And all of a sudden, one thing we should consider too, Thomas Harley is due a major raise at the end of next season as well. That is going to be a whopper of a contract. But do you look at bringing in someone like Aaron Ekblad, signing him on July 1st, and turning yourselves into one of the best defensive units in the NHL, period? One of the things that a lot of people are wondering about is, in order to make any of these moves, one, you want to first of all find someone that's going to send you things back that doesn't chew up any cap space. So my thought on a lot of this is, do they use Jason Robertson to A, create cap space, and B, reacquire draft capital? And that's why I positioned that from that DM that I got. If Jim Nill called Eric Tulsky and said, I want our 2 first-round picks back and I'll give you Jason Robertson, would you do it? So that seems to be like the one area, like the more conversations that I have, a lot of them about the Dallas Stars, a lot of them revolve around, it looks like this could be the move that Dallas makes in order to be able to have the flexibility to change this team enough that they can get over the Western Conference final hump. There is still a question about Peter DeBoer as well. If you enjoyed that video, and we certainly hope that you do, please hit the subscribe button right there here at Daily Faceoff. I will put this lineup up against any hockey lineup anywhere. It all gets underway at 9 o'clock Eastern with Morning Cup of Hockey. That is Johnny Lazarus. That is Colby Cohen. Then at noon, it's DFO Live. And then 3 o'clock Eastern, The Sheet. Get caught up on everything in hockey.